Hi everyone, thank you once again for joining us. We are excited to have you here. My name is Iporo Anjiro. I'm your co-host with Carol, and we are happy to have a very special guest today on Knowing Your Medical Maestros, and I will give him this chance to introduce himself.
Thank you, Zippy. My name's Dr. Joseph Amolo Aluoch. I'm a pulmonologist or chest physician. I've been working as a doctor for now 57 years.
Wow.
I trained in Makerere University College. It's interesting that time, that only medical school in East and Central Africa was Makerere Medical School, which was taking students from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. In my class, we had 30 students from East Africa, and from Kenya, we were 11 students. And in our group, we were the first lot in Kenya to do higher school certificate to the university. We did our school cert in 1960, higher, 61 and 62. 63, I joined Makerere, took 5 years. We qualified in 1968. Independence in Kenya came when we were in the university already, so I managed to watch the occasion at Uhuru Garden. After qualifying, I came to work in Kenyatta as an intern for 1 year, after which I was posted to Meru District Hospital as a district surgeon. I was covering 4 areas, Isiolo, Marsabit, and Moyale. In order to go and work in Moyale, a police airplane would come to Tharaka airstrip, pick me, and fly me to Moyale, occasionally to Marsabit, because there were no roads those days, and those are the days of the shifter. And most of the roads in those areas was loaded with landmines. So anytime you could be struck by a landmine if you traveled in those. It was called North Frontier Province, and working in those areas you had special kind of allowance, risk. It was called risk allowance, and but it was enjoyable when it lasted. If you didn't make it, from there I came back to Kenyatta to do my registration and prepare for postgraduate studies, which I went to London for 1 year. Then I went to Edinburgh to do my membership for another year. Then I did another chest specialization in Wales, and I worked a bit in South England as a consultant, junior consultant, before I came back. I worked for a while as the head of communicable diseases and infectious diseases before going on to India and Prague on a WHO scholarship to study infectious diseases. I came back and I was the head of infectious diseases hospital. It was called IDH in Nairobi. Also in charge of communicable diseases and national TB program in the whole of Kenya. Worked for a time. At the break of East African community, I was among those tasked with the forming of the Kenya Medical Research Institute in Kenya, which we did in 1977, do the legal aspect. And I was one of the first to be a director in the Kenya Medical Research Institute in charge of TB and respiratory diseases in Kenya. I worked for a time. At the same time, I was consultant at the Kenyatta National Hospital, and I was also consultant at the Infectious Diseases Hospital, and I was also still assisting in the Ministry of Health. Those were my permanent occupation as a civil servant before I eventually retired prematurely.
Prematurely. Wow, that's a very amazing and elaborate journey. And I think the thing that strikes me is why chest, why did you choose to go into the specialization of chest health?
People interest me.
Yeah.
First, my father was in charge of TB. And those days, the only chest problem that was significant in this country was TB. Mm-hmm. All these other cases we are talking about, like asthma, COPD, CLI, they were there, but they were of no public health significance. So they're not giving any special attention. Everybody doing chest medicine was as good as TB specialists. Then my immediate mentor, the late Dr. Wilfred Konangi, whom we worked closely with, he went to do chest medicine at the Brompton in London. And he advised me wisely to follow his footsteps, for which I remain eternally grateful. That's how I came to do chest medicine.
That's amazing. So you've given us a brief of your education and your journey as a specialist, and then you came into private practice. How was that transition for you from working for the government and then now moving into your own private practice? Tell us a bit
It was
about that.
very interesting, and particularly for me, for several reasons. But the best reason is that there was a lot of money. I was earning very little money in the government, and when I came into private practice, and there were very few senior consultants of my status at that time. Mm-hmm. For example, I was the only chest physician in the country. Wow. And I used to get patients referred to me from Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania to treat, because there were not many chest physicians at that time in East Africa, leave alone Kenya. Yes. That made it very busy. Secondly, I had made a lot of contacts within the government when I was a senior government doctor. So I had many corporations and parastatals that made me kind of their preferred doctor. Yeah. So by the time I started working in private practice, I had about 25 companies I was looking after. I don't know how I survived, but I was working as a private doctor in Nairobi Hospital, in Mata, in the Aga Khan, MP Shah, and one or two other minor nursing homes. I used to wake up at 5 o'clock to make the round. Thank God there was very little traffic those days, so I could manage to go all those 5 hospitals from between 6 and 9 o'clock and be in my clinic by 9 a.m. to start seeing a lot of queue of patients. I was, for example, when I started, I was the sole doctor for it was called the Kenya Post Office Corporation. That is before it was divided into 3. Telecom. I was the sole doctor running their clinic and going there once, 2 hours every day, 5 days a week. I was also one of the part doctors for the East African PAL that before it broke into 3. I had several insurance companies, several corporations, countless. But what made my work difficult, because of my connection when I left the Ministry of Health, within the first year of being in the private practice, I was appointed into 5 parastatals as a board manager. Wow. Automatically, I was appointed Kemni Board of Management, a board member. I was appointed the vice chairman of National Hospital Insurance Fund. And in fact, it was during my tenure in the National Hospital Fund that I brought in the graded contribution. Before NHIF, everybody used to produce 20 shillings Whether you're earning 10 shillings or a million shilling, your contribution was only 20 shillings, which I thought it was not fair.
Yes.
So I suggested it was taken, and because nobody can remember that, because they're not there to remember. I was also one of the first doctors to be put in Hotel and Restaurant Authority. There again, I'm the one who suggested grading hotels into 1, 2, 3, 4 stars. It put me in a bit of loggerhead with some of those people owning big tour hotels in Mombasa, the Romedo Makuti, that are downgraded. Of course, there were a lot of social interest.
Yeah.
I was also appointed as a city commissioner. I became the chairman of Public Health Department of Nairobi City Commission for 4 years. There are a lot of work we did, which I don't need to tell. I was also appointed Nairobi Area Health Authority. So I was a busy man. Over and above having my busy clinic.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was busy running medical association. I was busy building Kenya Medical Association. I was also busy in a respiratory society. That time it was called Kenya Association for the Prevention of Tuberculosis. I was one of the founder president. I was a busy guy in Nairobi here.
Yeah.
I was also busy because I was in the vice chairman of the medical advisory committee. In fact, I was the first black vice chairman of Kenya medical advisory committee in Nairobi. Wow. Previously, they were virtually all whites before. I was also working in Aga Khan Hospital, running a clinic. Before the clinic, the chest clinic in Aga Khan Hospital, I'm the one who founded it. That is running. I was also in the matter of the chairman of the medical advisory committee there. I'm the one who started the committee. I was also running a small nursing home in Nairobi West, where I was the chairman. I don't know how many you don't have, but somehow I did.
So many roles.
Yes, I did.
And at the same time, you still need to see patients.
Yes.
And you have your own life.
Life to live.
That's amazing. You're able to juggle all those 100 balls and
yes, I did.
None of them
and
fail.
I survived.
Yeah.
Still surviving. I'm 50-year-old, I'm still surviving.
It's really impressive. And I think maybe let me take you a bit back to when you were in medical school. How was the experience for you? What did you find like the most challenging part of it? And how did you even decide you want to do medicine before we move on from there? Yeah.
That was not difficult because if you read my book, In the Footsteps of My Father, then you know why it was not difficult. My father said, I loved his work right from day one, and we always close together. So it was not difficult for me to choose what to do, because he also wanted to. Even his boss was a white man, was kind of my godfather. Always say, you be a doctor. So when I went to school and I was asked to fill 3 options for what I want to do, I put number 1, medicine, number 2, medicine, number 3, medicine. And thank God that I was clever. You know, those days you had to be very, the top people, there's no creeping in like now you have students creeping in from the back door to do medical school. You had to be top. There's no shortcut.
Yeah.
And after all, we're doing exams, the so-called overseas Cambridge school certificate. Not like the usual local Kenya national examination that was always rigged and stolen and was used for. We are doing, and our exams were marked in Cambridge in the UK. They didn't know you, they only know what you have written down. So if you're poor, you fail. If you're clever, then you pass. So there's no rigging. So we passed. And we went to medicine because the top people went to medicine. That was not a big problem. Okay. I mean, doing exam for me, failing was not an option. It's always been passing throughout. And I've passed every exam, sometimes with distinctions. Yeah.
Amazing. I like that. And then maybe you've mentioned, for now you are retired, but you still see patients. Maybe you can take us through a day, like when you come for clinic, do you go for ward rounds anymore, or you just meet patients here?
No, I'm just working as I used to work before, except now is the scale. It's the quantity that reduced. The quality remains the same. Just the way I was seeing my patients in the ward, I still admit them in the ward. I see them here, and nothing changed. And I still keep up to date with my medicine, particularly now that I'm so interested in digital health, where I meet a lot of young doctors who they don't even know half about digital health as I do, so I'm up to date.
Up to date and very tech savvy, Prof. So that was actually a question that I wanted to ask also, like how do you keep up with the new information and studies and updates that are in medicine?
And foremost, participating in continuing professional development. I attend conferences over the years. I've attended several conferences, particularly in respiratory medicine. I've attended every year since 1986. I participated in American Thoracic Society, European Respiratory Society, and even African, British, Asian. That's one thing. And with the development of IT, there is Dr. Google. You can learn a lot from the internet. We have now podcasts, various on the YouTube. You can learn a lot of things. And like COVID, most of it we learned through the webinar. And you see, I have learned how to learn on my own. For example, I'm one of the HIV specialists in Kenya, and actually I was the founder chairman of HIV Clinician Society, which hosts the top HIV specialists. But HIV, I was one of the first fellows to see HIV in Kenya in May 1984. That is now 41 years ago.
Tell us, how was that experience? Just
terrible.
That a bit.
Terrible. The experience of HIV was the saddest thing in medicine I've seen in my life. It was a challenge. Even to diagnose the HIV, initially we had to take blood to the U.S. Center for Disease Control in Atlanta to diagnose HIV. Now you can do it on the spot you can even do a diagnosis yourself with saliva. Those days you carry the patients were miserable. They were so thin. I mean, it was actually, once you diagnose the HIV those days, it was a death sentence. You are wasted, they look miserable. In fact, it was been the most expensive. Every weekend, there was a convoys of coffins going to Western Kenya, going to bury their relatives. It was very expensive for the corporation. It caused a lot of economic problems. It was a disease that caused a lot of moral, religious, scientific, and all aspects of our life. It was not funny. It's not fun. I would meet patients in IDH where I was working. You see them there. There's very little you can see them. You can literally see them dying. I saw some of my friends, my age mates, younger than me, coming there. You just see them giving food and some medicine which you know very well is not going to cure him, just to keep him alive for the day. Come back the following day. It knew no more than it. I think that's the most miserable time I've had. Now it's different. Now it's become a chronic disease.
I think from that experience you're giving, I wanted to touch on COVID-19 a bit because you were there. Actually, I think we were together at the KP conference when we had the first case of COVID in Kenya. And HIV and AIDS seems to be way, more gruesome compared to COVID. But how was your experience with the COVID pandemic?
Well, the clinical experience for me is zero because I was not allowed to touch COVID patients. Anybody over 58, by the time COVID came, I was in my 70s. So I could only I could only see them from far. I used to see them by accident. Okay, for 1 month I closed my office here. I was seeing patients a month, 6 weeks. Then after that I opened, but seeing very selective. This you see the screen I had here.
Yeah,
in
there
front.
was a glass
Girl
screen
here.
here.
Yeah, that was because of because of COVID.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to cough into my face, give me COVID. So my experience is that it was a very also highly infectious, very lethal disease. But fortunately in Africa, thank God, because we wiped Africa, it was not as infectious, as lethal as it was in Europe or America.
True.
I mean, you see the number of people that died in America,
And Italy.
and Italy and Spain. Nothing. Africa was nothing. For us, it was just a drop in the ocean. I think God knew that if I give them full-blown COVID, these guys, they'll go.
God felt mercy on
They
us.
just sympathize with these natives. So it spared us. So it spared me. So a lot of my age mates or doctors went by. Here alone, we lost 25 doctors in Kenya. It was devastating. It's a big challenge.
As we wind up on this, maybe you can tell us some of the key turning points in your career, or does anything come to mind that was a key turning point in your career?
Nothing in particular. It's been smooth sailing all through.
Really?
Challenges, I haven't had any problem.
You've been one of the most fortunate men then.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've not had any problem. For me, just been accolade after accolade, being almost for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I've just had praises. And I've had the chance of being participating in several medical associations. As you know, one of the people who really improved Kenya Medical Association. Was responsible for getting that plot and getting the money to build that medical center. That was me, of Kenya Association of Physicians. I started the Kenya Association for Respiratory Diseases. I started the Kenya HIV Association. I was also one of the early president for Pan-African Thoracic Society. I was also a president for African Union Against Tuberculosis. And I was also, at one time, the vice president for the Commonwealth Medical Association of this region. And finally, I was also, for 36 years, I was official representative of the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh, which gave me a special. So I've had year after year, there's always accolade coming. So I've not had, and thank God my clinical practice has also been smooth. I've not had to be sued by patient for this and this, which had made life comfortable. When you practice for so long and you don't have any suit against, then you're lucky. Or anything reported by the medical board for bad. So it's been smooth sailing. It's not always easy. But when you're smart like me, there's no problem of having it.
I think that's amazing.